Aaron Esser is that person who is a guide for knowledge of how to adapt our practices of wheat farming in our region to challenges that we're facing because of the environment. Come on up, Aaron. This is your chance to get to the mic. It's a long way to get from there. So we're fortunate to have an expert about what you need to do in adapting our practices of wheat farming in Aaron Esser.
I'm not used to being confined to a box, so it kind of scares me a little bit. I usually like to get out and run around and everything else, but I'm Aaron Esser with WSU Extension, and I'd really like to thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to present to you guys today a little bit about what we have going on in wheat production. I'm going to talk about the adaptation of wheat and caring for the land. Just a little bit about myself. As I mentioned, Aaron Esser. I grew up on a wheat farm down by Uniontown, Washington, or Genesee, Idaho, right on the state line. I went to the University of Idaho. I got my degree in ag business. I really like the economic side of things. And then I got my master's in plant science. So I really like that plant science, the economics and stuff, interaction there. I've been at WSU now, at first, I can't believe I've already been there 24 years. It feels like just yesterday that I started, and then I start showing some of these pictures. I'm like, oh, wow, that has been a while ago. I've been with WSU. I'm a regional extension agronomist, so I work with plants across the region. I also manage a WSU Wilkie Research Extension Farm. I'll talk a little bit about that as well. About WSU Extension, if I use the term WSU Extension, can I have show of hands except for one, what I'm talking about when I say extension? Okay, there are a few hands. I wasn't sure I would get that many. Okay, so we have WSU Research over here on the left, that side, and then we have the wheat farmers over here on the right, on my side. Okay, so in between we have extension. And my job is to take knowledge being developed at WSU and other land-grant universities and other universities and bring that to the farmers. My other side of my job is to take the needs of these farmers and take it to WSU, other land-grant universities, or someone else and have them work on it. So it really is a two-way exchange of information. Because it doesn't do anyone any good at the WSU to just be doing stuff that's not relevant to what we need out in the field. So I kind of call that's my job, and for no better term, I call myself the missing link here. Just a little bit of where I'm located. If you ever drive out through Adams County, I live in Ritzville. I go up to Davenport all the way up here. And about 100 miles north to south, 50 miles east to west is my general area. But I really go wherever there's wheat, dryland wheats being produced. And then you can see where Pullman's at here on the map. And then I manage this facility. It's the WSU Wilkie Research Extension Farm. In the background, you can see Davenport, Washington, and we have Highway 2 running right through this. Anyone been to Davenport? Okay, do you know where this farm is at? It's just right at the edge of Davenport, right before you get into Davenport. We have the big gray building up on the hill. If you're ever out there and you see that door open, feel free to stop in and say hello, and I'll give you a quick tour or whatever. How today's gonna go? My goal is to just give you a better understanding of the wheat industry in Washington State. Value of wheat in Washington, I'm gonna give you a glimpse of that. We're gonna talk about adaptation to environmental issues and stress, and then talk a little bit about, or we're gonna finish up talking about caring for the land. And if you have any questions or anything, we can probably take care of them at any time. If I don't get through my presentation and they cut me off, that's fine. Wheat is important in the state of Washington. When you look at it, it's Washington State's number 4th in the nation in overall wheat production. Wheat industry contributed $650 to $1 billion to the state economy here in Washington State. 166 million bushels were produced in 2020. So it kind of varies with the weather and everything else, how many bushels on 2.3 million acres. When you look at that 2.3 million acres, a majority of it is in my area where we also often use summer fallow, so a winter wheat summer fallow system. We leave the ground lay idle. Unfortunately, it's not every 7 years, it's every other year. But, and some of our goals is to get closer to 7 years maybe. It creates almost 15,000 jobs in the state of Washington. And this one here's critical. When you look at wheat, we export roughly 90% of our crop here in Washington. 90% of it is exported. And a lot of it goes down through that Snake River dam system to get to the export. And over 30% of overall wheat, I think, in the nation run out of the Columbia River down here and the Snake River. So when you look at that, you know, and wheat in Washington, not only do we feed Washington, but we truly do feed the world. And this one here is important. Does this one surprise anyone? All wheat, not just the specific wheat, is non-GMO. I run into that on a daily basis. Every airplane I've ever flown on, I think, and I say I work with wheat, they'll say, oh, that's GMO. No, it's not. And we've talked about the environmental stress. The first speaker talked about those temperatures that we had. Here's from the weather station at the research facility there at Davenport. What do we? Almost 2 straight weeks of over 90 degrees. Ugh. And then we had, you know, 102, 106, and 104 degrees. Guess when someone had their field day planned? I had a 2-day field plan because of COVID. I was going to break everyone into smaller groups and things like that. And it was on the 28th and the 29th. Field day got canceled. It was way too hot. I hope that never happens again. And then this is just out my window the other day, April 14th, you know, where we have snow in Ritzville. And I see the sun shining in down here, and I'm getting Twitter-pated a little bit because as soon as I leave here, I'm running out to start seeding some research plots because I see the sun shining finally. I've been waiting for 2 weeks for sunshine. Okay, now we talked about the environmental stress. We've been on this for a while. WSU, in cooperation with OSU and the University of Idaho, we had a long-running program. I think it ran for 7 years, 6 or 7 years. We called it the REACH program. It really brought in a lot of scientists and stuff to look at climate and climate change and what it means to our production system that we have here in the inland Northwest, whether it's in Idaho, Oregon, and in Washington State. This project really focused on building resilience to climate change and cereal grain production. This is, I think, about the only slide I have on this. Otherwise, we could spend days and days talking about what we're going to see. And the first speaker talked a little bit about what we're going to see with the climate and change and what's that going to do to the farmers in Ritzville, the farmers in Davenport, and the farmers down by Pullman, and what the shifting climate and what cropping systems may or may not look like then. So one of the things we do, and I think WSU does this really well, is when you look at just the plant breeding and its focus on resilience. And it's all about genetics times environment. All these trials are always genetics times the environment. So we're always trying to take that environment into it. Here's just from our variety testing program. We look at 4 precipitation zones here in Washington State. You can see all of them, the Colton, Fairfield, St. John's, Crestons, greater than 20. I'm out here in this less than 12-inch precip zone. And we have locations at each of these. Overall, we have 25 locations a year. There's 23 of them, or 22 of them here, but we also have a couple of separate spring wheat locations as well, where we're looking at varieties times that environment, trying to make sure that we're picking varieties that are adapted with the climates that we're seeing to make sure the farmers have the best things in their hands. And when you look at this program, it annually screens over 200 different varieties each and every year of spring wheat, winter wheat, as well as barley. So we have a lot going on the environmental side. Now, I want to talk about caring for the land. And this one here is a cooperator of mine, Josh Knodel, and his 2 boys. Josh is the 4th generation on his farm. His dad, Jerry, was the 3rd generation, obviously. And when I first started at WSU 24 years ago, I spent a lot of time working with Jerry. Now I spend a lot of time working with his son, Josh. who went to WSU, got his degree in Ag TM, and is back farming. And then his 2 kids, and maybe when I retire, I'm gonna get an opportunity to work with his 2 sons in the operation. This story tells a lot. First of all, you see the combine in the background. And when you look at that, one of the unique things about farming and providing food, I think that makes it unique, is this combine represents probably, you're looking at a $500,000-$600,000 machine sitting there. It represents probably 30% of Josh's overall capital is tied up in the combines. Of his whole business, 40% of it's tied up in that combine. He uses that 2 to 3 weeks a year. What other business would tie up that much capital and only utilize it not even a month a year? That's farming, and that's what it takes to feed people. When you look at the fishing industries and the crabbing boats and things, a lot like the combines, where it ties it up and they're only utilized for such a small period during that time. So that's one of the things that makes it unique and interesting. And I want to mention that these farmers are the original environmentalists. When you look at it, they kind of get a bad rap, I think, once in a while. Why would Josh not want to do something that's going to improve his land, improve his business? If he doesn't take care of his land, it's not going to be there for this next generation. He has every incentive, more than each and every one of us, to take care of that land. And he uses the best decisions he knows at the time to do that. So just wanted to introduce you to Josh a little bit. This is July 14th, or July 2014 in Davenport, Washington. I think I learned a new term that day called the haboob. Never knew they even existed, but I got to experience one. But when you look at it and caring for the land and stuff, this rolled through Davenport and that Eastern Washington wheat production. It was a unique and interesting day, and not one I hope we ever repeat. But when you look at how we lose soil, we lose it really in two main ways. Farmers will lose soil primarily from 2 sources. Either the wind, like what we're seeing in the haboob, will take it away, or we lose it through water erosion. Those are the primary 2. There's other things that can move it. Some people joke about me as a scientist, and when I'm out there pulling all these soil samples, that I'm hauling more soil out of their fields than they're losing through wind and water erosion combined. I get farmers joking about that. So these are the 2 primary reasons. So what do we do for caring for the land? One of the things we're working on is increasing diversity. Have you guys seen more canola fields out there? And more diversity. That's one of the things we are doing. Now, is it something we can do on an annual basis? Market prices dictate a little bit of this. And crop rotations dictate some of it. Landlords will dictate some of it. Farming partners will dictate some of it. Whether or not you can take this to your warehouse or where you take your normal crops will dictate how much diversity you can put on your operation. It's not a matter of just if a farmer wants to have diversity, is if the system and things going down the line will allow for that. So, and it's all, I showed the Josh Knodel and his dad, and I love working with those father-son combinations and watching those generations argue over where the farm's going, how diverse it's gonna get. And you can get some knockdown and struggle if I could get from, gosh dang it, Dad, if we could do this, if I could get $1 for every time I heard that, I could have retired by now. Caring for the land. We also want to increase coverage. And if you drive by, I live in Ritzville, and you often see it. We had it 3 weeks ago on the news, potential blowing dust conditions starting in Ritzville and everything else. I see it on the news, and I cover my eyes, and I'm like, ugh, and stuff. But when I started 24 years ago, and what it looked like versus what it looks like today, it's remarkably different. The farmers out there have been doing a much better job of putting this cover on the ground and doing things that help reduce wind erosion. Bigger clods, we know if we lose bigger clods, more residue, it will help reduce wind erosion. We just got to figure out how to do it within some of our limitations and of our equipment. So that brings me to this one. This is my friend Rob DeWalt. He's crossing the road. He seeded some stuff for me in Davenport, Washington. This is his operation. And one of the things we're doing for caring for the land is improving the overall management. And when you look at this, you just see a tractor running across the road, right? Going, oh, I better slow down. I hope you slow down if you see something like that crossing the road. There's $300,000, $100,000. There's $500,000. And there's about $100,000. I'm pointing to this little thing up on the cab, and that's the computer that runs this equipment. And that thing that runs the equipment is all the tubes and hoses and the electronics that keep that thing running. When you talk about the technical issues that these guys are having back here, that's the farmer's biggest nightmare now is, those electronics aren't working. Because they control that whole system that he has out there in the field, where it's talking to the satellites and everything else. And it's a serious investment for farmers. This is a no-till drill, so it can go through the soil. No tillage is needed, and it goes through, it puts seed in the soil, it puts the required nutrients in the soil, and then it covers the seed up, and then we come through and harvest. But it is a serious investment. And when you look at the price of this and what we see in the housing industry, you guys hear about the prices in the housing industry and how they're going up and up and up and everything else. Same thing here. When he's full of fertilizer, seed, and fuel, you know, he's upwards of $7,000, $8,000 running across the road just in products. And that brings me to this. We talked about that little thing he had on that $100,000 investment on technology. It allows him to do things like this. This is a field, and it's a prescription, I call it a prescription map. So we're looking at a field, and we see 3 different colors. We got the red, that's the least productive ground. We got the yellow, that's average ground. And the green ground is our most productive soil on this field. We want to care for each of those areas differently. And we are caring for each of those areas differently. They're getting different rates of fertilizer on the green ground versus what we're doing with the yellow ground versus what we're doing with the red ground. Why? A, it saves us money, less use of nitrogen, and less waste. If we can put it in the correct spot at the correct time when the plant needs it, that's better, and it's not running off, getting into our groundwater, or leaving through air particles or anything else. It's not cheap, but it's something that's being implemented out there on a wide thing. So when you see those little bubbles and those little things on the tractors, that's usually what's associated with, not just auto steer, but technology like this. And that brings us to this. This is a sprayer. I think if you've driven around, you've seen these things. The self-propelled sprayers have really come on the last 10 years. And the cool thing with these is it too has that little yellow bubble up there. That's the computer system that's talking to the satellites. When that sprayer with that 110-foot boom goes across the ground, it senses if it's already been sprayed. So if I've sprayed this and I'm bringing the boom over, it shuts it off. So we're not overlapping. Why is that important? A, yes, it does save the farmer some money, but it's also less pesticides in the environment and less potential for an off-target application. And that brings us to this one. It's called the Weedit Technology, and we see it set in here. And how does it work? You see that circle is around that little eyeball up there. And we have these all along this boom. This is an 80-foot boom. Next slide here. It has an infrared eye, and as it goes across the ground, it can recognize a weed in our fallow systems, in our no-till fallow systems. So it'll see a weed, next slide, then it will spray the weed. So we're not doing a broadcast application across the whole field, we're only targeting those weeds. We can greatly reduce our applications here by about upwards of 90% across some of these fallow fields. And we're keeping them covered, and that means less blowing dust. Right now, this is fairly new technology. It's only been out there probably 5 years, I think, and there's already been 45 of them sold. And what does that mean? These little eyeballs, just the technology alone is $1,200 a foot. And they're putting them on 80 to 100-foot sprayers. Do the math. The sprayer itself is a $300,000 sprayer. The vehicle it's on. So you're taking the technology and putting it on that. So it's a pretty serious investment for these guys to implement it. But it's something that saves the soil, saves the resources, uses less pesticides in the environment, and hopefully improves their long-term profitability. And this one, farmers have implemented conservation tillage across the nation at an unprecedented rate over the last 25 years. I should have said 24 years because that's how long I've been working at WSU, right? I missed that one. And you guys, society has benefited from this immensely. Society has seen has benefited greatly with cleaner air, cleaner water, stored carbon, and less emissions as a society from our conservation tillage that we've implemented. However, there's one primary technology that has allowed this conservation movement to take place. When I talk about what is that one primary technology, we talked about all the tractors and stuff. What's the one that's the most important for this technology, for conservation tillage? Any ideas? The farmer? Close, yes. Someone say the extension agent, please. Okay, no, it's not that either. I'll take a little bit of credit, but not much. It's not the green tractors, and it's not the red tractors. Roundup. How many people in this room like Roundup? One way back there. The rest of you guys are scared to raise your hands. It's Roundup. This technology, what it has allowed farmers to do and implement conservation tillage, not only here in Eastern Washington and the wheat producers, but across the nation, is like nothing else we've seen. It's allowed farmers to pull the tillage out to reduce it for weed control and utilizing this. It has allowed growers to greatly reduce and eliminate tillage. And then GMO technology. I remind you, we do not have GMO technology in corn, in wheat. We do have it in corn, sorry. But we do not have GMO wheat. But it is in corn, it is in soybeans, and it is in that canola crop I showed. And that can be a valuable tool in a systems management to improve diversity and improve conservation tillage across the farm. When I look at what Roundup has done, and then you incorporate GMO technology, it's really pushed the envelope on conservation tillage. If we wouldn't have had Roundup, and getting farmers to started looking at it, it wouldn't have demanded. I talked about what farmers need and people pushing stuff, we need this and need this. Without Roundup as the initiating tool, we wouldn't have got to these other steps. I have farmers, I have a 42-foot Sheltie mower and that does the best for my conservation tillage. I can blow through my stubble with that and then get my equipment through it and it works great. If we wouldn't have had Roundup 25, 30 years ago and getting farmers started, that farmer may not have even had an opportunity to get his hands on that 42-foot Sheltie mower because it wouldn't have been a demand. And with Roundup, we're going to keep advancing using that Weedit technology. We're removing a lot of the Roundup off of the ground. Are we eliminating it? No. Are we using it more sustainably? Yes. I'm getting close to the end right here, but when I look at the wheat industry, I've been doing this for 24 years. I think we're really at a pivotal road for farming. Fertilizer costs right now are upwards of 140%. Roundup costs are up 100. You can go there. Roundup costs are up 190%. That gallon of Roundup I used last year at that research farm cost me $19 a gallon. The stuff I bought this year was $47 a gallon. The fuel I bought last year to seed the crop was costing me $2.40 a gallon. The stuff I'm buying this year is costing me $4.48 or something like that a gallon. They're up, and it hurts. And so when you look at and we've seen fertilizer cost up before, farmers have. We've seen Roundup cost, and that's if you can even get Roundup. And the equipment, if you can get the chips and the supplies and the tires and stuff you need, are extremely difficult today. So when you look at all this, and then when I look at it, this 2022 crop, as you drive around and you see that crop growing out there, that's the most expensive crop we'll ever harvest here in the Pacific Northwest and across Washington State, is what's out there right now. Yes, question. The question is biochar, and I'm glad that came up. we've looked at biochar, and I have one guy who really wants me to incorporate biochar. And there's one reason I haven't looked at his program and incorporated it into my research. His biochar, and she talked about the sources of it. He's using wheat residue to make his biochar. I don't want to take something that's so valuable, pull it off of the soil, so I'm going to take it from his ground and have it more susceptible so I can put it on my ground. I don't like that. And when I look at biochar and these fields, from just a quick economic standpoint, if you're going to use it in greenhouses where they're going to pay more for it versus putting it on a field out here, the economics I don't think are there yet. Now, will they be in 5 years or 10 years? I hope so. But yes, good question. Good question, and he's giving me the hook anyhow. So thank you guys for your time. I really appreciate it.